So he says, Vayomer Hashem el Aaron, chapter 18, verse 1, God says to Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you, Tisu es avon hamikdash. You bear the sin of the temple. What does that mean? If we didn't have Rashi, Moshe, what would we say that even means? We wouldn't even know what's that talking about. What does that mean, bear the sin of the temple? You and your children with you, Tisu es avon kuhunaslem. Bear the sin of your kahuna. What does that mean, Elliot? This is why we have to have Rashi. Otherwise, we don't even know how to read the psukim. So, Elliot, you read Rashi on these psukim. Vayomer Hashem el Aaron. So God said, so the pasuk says, so right away we have what's Rashi saying here? Yeah, but why? Why does Rashi have to say that? The pasuk says God spoke to Aaron. And why does he have to say that he spoke to Moshe and Moshe told Aaron? What's going on here? Oh, I'm sorry? Yeah, the B'nai, exactly, Moshe. Very, very, very beautiful, Moshe. Because Moshe is pointing out from the context that the previous psukim, hello, Thera, hello, Shepsel. But the previous psukim are Moshe, B'nai Yisrael speaking to Moshe, and they don't have a response from it. Nothing has a response. So they go and speak to Moshe. Now all of a sudden we have this next paragraph which says that Hashem said to Aaron. So therefore Rashi says what's going on here is that this is Moshe's response to the Bnei Israel, that God told him to go to Aaron and tell them that they're going to be responsible for guarding the Beis Hamikdash from non Kohanim going in. Because what was the previous pasuk? The previous pasuk is, we're going to die because we can't come too close to the Mishkan. That's what they said to Moshe. So the response is Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron, it's your responsibility to make sure nobody comes too close. You Kohanim have to make sure that it's your job to make sure that nobody can come into the temple. You have to protect this sacred space. Because if anybody's allowed in, it's not going to be sacred anymore. You have to protect the space. I once had a teacher, I had a principal when I was in first grade, only for first grade, when he was a great principal. And his name was Rabbi Feitman. He was in Cleveland. And then he moved to Cleveland, which I saw a survey said was the worst place to live in America. But people are always making fun of Cleveland. I have nothing against it. Anyway, it's the cheapest place to live in America. Lowest cost of living.
About the hood, not the actual best place.
I don't know.
I've been the Jewish.
The parts of it are very nice. But anyway, the point is we're not going to hate on Cleveland. We like Cleveland. So Rabbi Feitman said there was once a town where the clock was very, very high up on a building. And then the problem was when the clock broke, to fix the clock, you had to get a huge ladder. And to go up to the top of the ladder was a whole Gansa Megillah. You had to get these long trucks. You had to get people to go up. It was a whole mess. So they had an idea. The town council took a vote, and they said, instead of making the clock all the way on the top, we'll just put the clock in the middle of the square. So it's very accessible in case there's an issue. But then, do you know what happened? What do you think happened to that clock? What? No? Yeah, everybody's walking by, thinks I could change the time. Next thing you know, everybody's changing the time on the clock, and the clock didn't have the right time anymore. Because you have to protect the sacred space, or else it becomes contaminated. So that's, or not, contaminated is a very strong word. It becomes diluted or no longer contains its corrupted. I mean, the corrupted is so negative. Like people mean well, so therefore Hashem says to Aaron, here, Moshe Amar, Sheyomer Aaron, Laziro al Takanat Yisrael. You have to take precautions for the welfare of Israel. Shelo yikansu mikdash, so they shouldn't enter into the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, go on, Asher. Read the next one. I mean, Elliot's reading the first part. Right, they are the sons of Kas, the father of Amram. Their job was to protect the space. You know that. Hey, Avi, how you doing? Baruch Hashem. The family of Kas was responsible to protect the space. This is so important because one of the themes we've been talking about with Korach is that it was an attack upon the kahuna. And everybody thought that Korach's argument was that everybody could be a Kohen. And here Hashem is saying to Aaron, to Moshe, to tell Aaron that not everybody can go into this sacred space whenever you want. This goes fundamentally against America today and like our value system. Like America, for example, the Capitol, do you think you need a pass to get in? No, everybody's always allowed to go into the Capitol. It's the people's building. It's not like limited by, like you don't need an appointment. You could always walk into the Capitol. That's our building. But that's not the Mikdash. The temple is limited. It's limited. Only one Kohen was allowed into the sanctuary at a time. You're never allowed to have two Kohanim in the sanctuary. And there was a part of it that the Holy of Holies, only one Kohen could go in once a year. I mean, one day a year. So this is a very hard idea for people to accept, that the Torah is saying that when something is especially holy, it has to be exclusive. Does this rub you the wrong way? Is there anybody who is like bothered by this? We can be honest. Yeah. Goes against the fundamental value of one of the principles of, like the hippie gatherings. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but like everybody has to agree, everybody's equal, it's all one vote. And this is against that, right?
I don't see a model where you always have two people, so one person should be the other person in check, perspective, say.
Yeah. But here, the sanctuary, you're only allowed to have one at a time. And the Bnei Yisrael are not allowed in. There are certain parts where they can't go in. Anyway, let's see the next Rashi. Yeah, it's a contrast to American society, the values of American society. There are certain values which it goes hand in hand with, like the idea of, in certain ways, it's a meritocracy. Like we studied in Talmud earlier this week, that if there's a person who is an idolater, i.e. not Jewish, and he is a mass knowledge of Torah, he's even greater than the Kohen Gadol. So in that sense, it's a meritocracy. So there's certain aspects of our faith which are meritocracy, but there are other aspects which are just simply not. And the hard part is trying to figure out which area of our faith is a meritocracy and which area of our faith is not. Meritocracy means like it's all how well you do, like what level you achieve, everybody's equal. Like Torah study is a meritocracy. It doesn't matter if you're a mamzer. If you know the most Torah, you're the one who should get the most respect. The mamzer, the Talmud says, the mamzer Torah scholar is greater than the Kohen Gadol, who is an ignoramus. Meaning, a mamzer is the bastard child. So the bastard child can, in that sense, achieve a much, much higher level of holiness and closest to God than the high priest. But on the other hand, the high priest, even the mamzer, the greatest Torah scholar, he can't do certain things that the Kohen could do. Here, read this next Rashi, Elliot. Tisu es avon hamikdash. Very good. So he says, Tisuas Avon Mikdash, Kar Aleichem Ani Matil Onesh Hadarim. I will place upon you, Kohanim, the punishment of the non-Kohanim. Sheyachatu be'iskei advarim hamikudashim, who commit a sin about the holy matters, hamisurim lachem, which are given to you. There are certain things that the Bnei Kahas, the children of Amram, they were responsible. What were they responsible? Ha'oel. This is a strange, it's not clear what Rashi means by that, but the Aron, the Shulchan, the Ark, the table, the holy implements, the Klei Kodesh, Atem Teshvu B'Tasiru, at Kol Zara Baliga, that any non-Kohen who touches them will die. And there is a famous scene in the second book of Shmuel, I think it's chapter 6, when they're bringing the Aron, and people who touched it died into Yerushalayim, and so then they had to leave it there. I think his name was Uziel ben Avinadav. I forget the exact name. You can look it up. Rabbi Yosef could tell us.
Uzzah,
Okay.
But in that case, the ark was in transition. I thought you were going to give the example of King Uzziah with the incense, because that was in sanctuary, and they should have stopped him before he even got there.
Okay, so there are multiple examples that we could have given. But you're right, you're absolutely right, that so you weren't even allowed to touch it or for trespass. And there were two examples in the Tanakh of kings who tried to serve in the temple. One was Uzziah, and the other was Yeravam. Anyway, it says, V'atau v'necha, okay, Kohanim. Read the last Rashi on that pasuk, Elliot. Tisu et Avon.
Kohanim Tefam. She'ina Masora Levium vid Tizairu Levium Hashogim Shelo Yegiu Alechem Be'avalut Tefam.
Right, and now what Rashi is telling us is that Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron, you're responsible for the sin of the priesthood, because the sin of the priesthood, this job of the Levites does not allow them to do your job. This is not given over to the Levites. And you have to warn the Levites who are shogegim here, who are not vigilant or diligent, that they should not that they should not enter into your service. This is a very important point that Rashi is making here, and that's fundamental to our faith. Even the Levites. Okay, let me ask you another question about the Levites. Let's say the Kohen. So the Kohen. How you doing, Jonah? The Kohen walks in. Grab a chumash, Jonah. Please grab a chumash. Let's say you sit down to bench, and there's a Kohen there, and everybody else is there. Who gets the honor of benching first? Who leads the mezumid? The Kohen. Right. Let's say there's no Kohen, but there's a Levi. Does the Levi lead the benching? Do we say, okay, let's have the Levi lead?
Yeah.
He can, but he doesn't. But we're not obligated to give it to him, because where does the Levi get his sanctity from? The Levi gets his sanctity by serving the Kohen. So if the Kohen's not there, then the Levi doesn't get it. So the Levi's sanctity comes from serving the Kohen. So that's why we always have to have a Kohen. Thank God Jonah's here now. Okay, the next pasuk says, "V'gam esachacha matei Levi." Also, your brother is from the tribe of Levi, Shevet Avicha, the tribe of your father. Hakrevitcha, you shall draw them near, and they shall be joined to you and minister to you. So now this is also interesting, because Korach's whole argument was we're being shut out. So at the end of the parasha, after Korach is destroyed, the parasha is laying out their clear lines. Excuse me, Asher, would you read the Rashis for us? Who is he referring to here? The first was a reference to Aaron's brothers who came from the tribe of Kahas, the children of Amram. But now,
B'nai Gershon of B'nai Merari.
Now we're talking about not the children of Kahas, but the children of Gershon and Merari. So they were the brothers of Kahas. Okay, go on.
V'yilavu,
and they shall be joined to you. What does that mean?
v'yischabru aleichem,
Their job is to join to you.
v'hazhir gam hem es hazarim mi'likrav aleihem.
Their job is also to warn the non-Kohanim about coming close to you. So what were the Levites' jobs in the Beis HaMikdash and in the Mishkan? Let's go over this.
Yeah.
So this is one of their jobs, was protection. There's a debate amongst the commentaries whether they were actual security guards, like the people with the guns, like the commandos, the Secret Service, or they were just like the guards outside Buckingham Palace, which are presumably incredibly qualified people, but they're mostly for show, right? And I mean, I don't remember. I've been there, but I don't remember it. I mean, I assume they're just for show. Aviva is a British person.
Ceremonial, yes.
Right, ceremonial. Right. So the Levites' job was Shmira. What was another job of the Levites while we're talking about it? Carrying the Kalim. What was another job?
Singing.
Singing. Singing. They sang on the Duchan. Those are their primary jobs. And what was another job of the Levites? There's one major job which we what?
Blowing the trumpets.
So that's part of the musical instruments and the singing, but very good, Moshe. But there was another job. What?
Cleaning.
Cleaning?
That's a guess. I don't know.
I never heard of them cleaning.
Well, somebody has to clean.
The Kohanim cleaned.
Okay.
There's another job of the Levites. Well, that's serving the Kohanim. But another job was in the Levitical cities. There were 48 cities where if you were an accidental careless killer, you were responsible to protect, go to the Levites, and the Levites would rehabilitate you.
Well, I thought.
Here, look at that. Rashi lists their responsibilities. But Asher, I didn't mean to cut you off. What'd you say?
No, I thought you just. So when like a guy who accidentally kills goes to Ir Mikla, the Levim actually have to do like something. I thought like just the being within that city was enough like protection.
Their job was to
Like they just live there. That's not, how's that a job?
No, that's the technical thing was they just lived there, but they had to basically attend to the people of the city. They ran the city. Their job was to be the prison guards of the city, the spiritual guards, to attend to the people, to inspire the people, to guide the people. And so, I mean, their basic jobs was to be teachers of Torah. The Kohanim and the Levim, they served in the temple 2 days a year. There was so many of them. They all served at the end of the time, basically 2 days a year, maximum, maybe 3. So what would they do the rest of the year? There was no professional rabbinic class. I mean, there were no like hired rabbis. So the Kohanim and the Levites were the rabbis. So they taught Torah classes. I mean, they taught Torah classes. The Kohanim looked at leprosy. But in that sense, it was a caste society. If you're a Levite, you can never become a Kohen. If you're Yisrael, you can never become a Levite. The only thing you could hope to do is you could have your daughter marry a Kohen. That would be so geschmack. Then you could have Kohanim grandchildren.
You can't go to the mechatenis for dinner.
Why?
Because your daughter will be allowed to eat the truma, but you won't be able to.
Yeah, but you could eat the meiser because the meiser was allowed to be eaten once it was given to the Levites. Well, yeah, it's a good point. Okay, so now read the next Rashi on that. Go on.
Visharuscha.
Vishartucha, right?
Vishmiras hasharim.
So this is going to list the responsibilities of the Levites. So first, they had to guard the gates of the courtyard. They were the commandos. They were the Secret Service.
Umanos mehem.
Yes.
The
Gizbarin va'am rachlin. They were responsible to be. Okay, this is something we didn't list. They were the clerks, the managers of the temple. Their job was to administer. They were the executive directors of the temple. That was the Levites' job. The Levites' job was to control the temple. The Kohanim served, but the Levites were the executive directors. So maybe they did clean, maybe in that sense. maybe they tended to make sure everything was operating. Like if there was some repairs needed, who do you think would be keeping the books? Who do you think the Levites? Don't underestimate their responsibility. What?
When money was given to the temple, who did it, where did it?
The Talmud talks about this at length in Tractate Shekalim, that they had different shofarot. The shofar was called a collection, like what we call a charity box, and it was narrow on the top, so you could drop it in, and wide on the bottom, and it was kept in there, and there are different collections for different funds, and when somebody would go in to get the money, they had to make sure that he had no pockets, because we were worried about misappropriation. Wherever there's flour, there's mice. So we had to worry about theft, and we had to worry about people misappropriating. And we had treasurers and money changers, and yeah, this was their job. It was a lot of responsibility, a lot of money changed hands there. And there was also a lot of animals they needed to buy for the sacrifices. There's a lot of big production. Okay, I just want to stop for 1 second. Barbara sent me an article about the rabbis and the chazanim of the Jewish community in Iran being brought in for questioning. So we have to have them in mind for questioning, like, give me a break. This is called revenge. We pray for their safety. And we're
For Jewish people were also rounded up today, two Jewish families, total 33 people.
people, we said
You
that
can't tell people to come out and then leave them. It's not right.
there are kids who come here who have direct relatives in Iran. So very serious situation. But I don't think those people want to leave. They never wanted to leave. So it's very tricky, because I would say, let's rescue them, but they don't want to leave. They just want to live there. Yeah.
You could say the same for people in New York.
Could say the same thing, no, for Jews in the diaspora, and it's always been throughout our history. Like this is the same story. The Jews in Hong Kong, Jews in China, Jews in Russia, Jews in everybody always think, it's a tricky situation. But what I'm saying is, I don't think they want to be rescued. That's what I was trying to say. Like, I don't think they say, okay, let's send in the Mossad and rescue them. They don't want to go.
I think that we're not allowed to bring any money out because so there are tremendous financial consequences. I have been family.
I'm sure that's true in some cases, but I don't know how true it is, because there's one boy from here, I don't want to say his name, and he went to visit his grandmother in Dubai 2 months ago. So they spent a few weeks with her in Dubai. And the grandmother doesn't have any money, but she likes Iran. She wants to stay there. That's what she knows. That's her. I mean, people are strange. I mean, not strange. People are very, very afraid of change.
Creatures
Very
of
afraid.
habit.
I want to, there was one, I was listening to this interview on Omer Shem Tov, who was a hostage, and he was held in the tunnels. And he said that one time, while he was being held there, everybody fell asleep. And then he woke up, and he had there's 10 guards. They were all sleeping, and their guns were right there, their rifles. And he said he picked up the gun, and he just couldn't shoot it. He just couldn't shoot them. He said he was afraid it would. I mean, he didn't have so much experience. He was afraid it would jam. But people are. I'm not. Obviously, he went through hell that we can't even imagine. But I'm saying is the amount of willpower it takes just to change your status quo is enormous. That's the only reason why I'm here today is because my grandmother in Belgium in 1940 had just this tremendous willpower and said, we need to leave. And everybody else in her family yelled at her and said, you can't go, you can't go. And she left, and my father's uncles and aunts were murdered in the Shoah. So most of the Jews just did not leave. They just could not leave. They could not leave. And who left? The people who are pessimists, or the people who are just intensely filled with energy. And
People, there's a difference. That then they didn't know what was going to happen, and it had never happened before. Now it's only been 70 years. Right?
I think that
Now,
they knew then, I mean, they saw plenty of pogroms, they saw plenty of,
they think of what was
right, they couldn't imagine the
They
full
couldn't
extent.
imagine.
But my grandmother imagined it,
My grandparents left too, but. I mean,
right, so I'm saying,
Is that
most didn't, most didn't.
they couldn't imagine. You
Mm.
can't blame them for not being able to imagine, but these people, all these years later, after that historical experience.
But they would argue that, and I don't agree with them, but I'm just saying, they would argue, we've been living safely here, we're safer here than in Israel, there's no terrorism. The safest place I've ever felt as a Jew, the safest place I ever felt was, in one sense, was in Cuba. It's the only place I saw no security guards, the door is wide open, and everybody could walk in. Why? Because everybody knows that if you do one thing against the dictator, we'll just kill you and everything. So it's like, it's a different world. Like, even in Afghanistan, there was a Jew.
You know, someone went.
Yeah, there was a Jew in Afghanistan with the Taliban. Yeah, this is, people
He
are,
said he was there to guard the Torah.
okay, sure. All right, well,
Then he asked for money.
Kodesh Tov, we're gonna dive in now. I don't have any answers to that question, but we'll have them in mind.